If you play Destiny today, then you're going to fall into one of three categories: New Light, Leveling, or Endgame, represented by these colors. Now, I'll also design this to approximate how much time in your progression journey you're likely going to spend in each of these categories. Now, just for the sake of complexity, thanks Bungie, let's also add a Pinnacle grind to the end of this chart, representing the Pinnacle power grind, which is at the end of the endgame leveling. So here, this is a very, very generalized journey that players who play Destiny will experience. You'll be a New Light, you'll be leveling, you'll be endgame leveling, and then you'll be Pinnacle leveling. Now, New Light is really only reserved for players who are playing the game for the first time, or maybe players who have taken a very long hiatus and come back to the game to relearn its new systems. Everybody else is probably going to fall into one of these other three categories. You'll either be running anything in the game at all to level, getting blues, purples, which will increase your power level. Now, you can also be in the leveling stage running for powerful rewards, such as Nightfalls, raids, competitive PvP. If you're a player in the endgame stage, then you'll likely be running these content pieces at the upper echelons, including Grandmaster Nightfalls and Master level raids, getting Adepts, etc. And if you're at the Pinnacle leveling stage, then you're essentially just going to be running Pinnacle content, which is what I just mentioned, again and again week to week, which is going to consist of those harder raids and GMs, and some harder PvP. Those extra 10 levels of Pinnacle are an opportune time as well for player min-maxing as far as their gear and weapons are concerned. Now, this is the journey of a player in Destiny. If you play, you're going to fall into one of these categories of the game. Now, Destiny is described as a live service. It's an evolving world that Bungie is committed to keep injecting new content into the game to keep things feeling fresh and rewarding. So every 3 to 6 months, new seasons or injections of content follow. They'll introduce new activities, weapons, armor, and pursuits that the player could opt into, such as titles and seals. The problem is that over time, in the current landscape of the game, more and more players continue to make their way to the end or the Pinnacle category of the game. They're essentially hitting the end wall of their progression. And for a lot of players, including myself, the min-maxing pursuit that is there at that Pinnacle level is not enticing, because at this stage of the game, you're able to complete all the activities. There isn't anything extra challenging to aspire to once you min-max. There are no unique rewards or cosmetic rewards to chase to mark the accomplishment of players who reach this level. Adept weapons and artifice armor don't really count, if you ask me. These are things that you'll naturally get as you're going through the endgame stage. So, what is there to chase after you've completed the Pinnacle stage and you've min-maxed your character? The answer is nothing. There is a reason that player numbers drop substantially when new progression is not introduced into the game in some meaningful form. Arbitrary node systems of upgrades, collecting rerolls of the same weapons again for stat increases that are perhaps, horizontal forms of progression might keep some players enticed. But for a large majority of players, including myself, we're needing an extra ceiling room to be added to the progression journey, new levels to be added, new things to chase. Now, obviously, Bungie cannot keep adding these to the game. This has been something I've experimented with for years in the forms of seasonal power bumps, injections of loot, etc. There are too many players in the community that spend large amounts of time in the leveling, in the endgame leveling parts of the game, and that's fine. Players don't have the same amount of time to play every week. That's perfectly understandable. Raising the power level all the time for these players to chase and adding new tiers of difficulty to the game would leave those players in a perpetual state of always having to level and the ceiling always being raised in something they never feel like they can meet. And again, I understand. Doesn't sound fun for some people. The plus 10 levels of breathing room that Bungie is adding back into the systems in the Pinnacle grind is something that I was relieved to hear, because it does give me something arbitrary to chase. Now, it was something that was also met with some pretty vicious backlash from the community for players who do not like that plus 10 power clown. They do not want the ceiling to constantly be raised as they're playing the game. So, give the players what they want. Every year, give these players a big bump in power to pursue in Destiny in the form of expansions. They can grind, they can work towards it for every season, and when a new expansion comes out, raise it again. They have that long-form progression. Keep the game as it is. But for other players, like myself, the progression journey in Destiny needs a refresh. Bungie needs to take the progression journey of Destiny from the leveling, the endgame leveling, and the pinnacle leveling, and offer a reset for players who want to experience these caveats of the game with a fresh new coat of paint. Other games accomplish this by offering an alternate realm, server, or version of the game where players get to start from level 1 and experience the leveling aspect of the game over again. It keeps things fresh. The seasonal theme is injected into these progression journeys, such as season-themed events, activities, and gear that can be used while they're leveling to provide new avenues or to enhance the existing progression journey that they're going through if they decide to repeat it. A hypothetical Destiny 2 with these two realms would look something like this. On one track, we have the normal game. This is the normal Destiny that everybody plays today. The normal progression starts at the expansion launch, the power level is raised, everybody levels, the endgame level, and the pinnacle level. One time the entire year. It stays the same. Every time a new season is added, the new season activity, content, do not raise the level, but they introduce those new activities and loot to chase. Stories and story missions are available in those seasons, and players can work to achieve their own progression goals over the course of that year and not have to do it all within one season. On the other track, we have the Destiny 2 season refresh. This progression journey would mirror the normal game's progression pathway. We have the core leveling, the endgame leveling, and the pinnacle leveling. Now here's where things begin to divert. For players who opt to make a seasonal refresh character at the start of that season, their characters are reset. Launching the season refresh version of Destiny would have the player make a brand new character, starting from an empty vault, and play the game from power level 0. The leveling, the endgame leveling, and the pinnacle leveling would be their long-form progression track to work on over the course of a season, instead of the entire year. Additionally, the season refresh version of Destiny would have seasonal injections, the exact same way the normal one will, but instead these will revitalize the leveling journey. It's not going to be the exact same every time. For example, a new season activity that is available in the normal realm, if you play that in the season realm, you might get enhanced rewards or additional rewards that offer greater jumps in power. New seasonal themed random events could happen as the player is leveling in the season realm. Imagine you're doing the Witch Queen campaign. The season is Cabal themed, and all of a sudden a Cabal public event or Cabal random encounter drops in the middle of the Witch Queen campaign. Things like that would be pretty cool. These random encounters could offer progression boons, such as seasonal weapons or armor with enhanced perks. The takeaway here is that the current version of Destiny could coexist another version of the game where progression is revamped and reset each season. Players who need long-form progression, but they don't have the time to achieve it perhaps in a single season, can play on the normal realm of Destiny, where progress is never reset and the progression ceiling is never raised throughout the year. They have their goal and they can work to accomplish it at their own pace. For players who, like myself, yearn for more of a grind, of chase, of revamped gameplay that we know Bungie is capable of delivering, these experiences can be found in a seasonal realm where the progress is reset, and over the course of the season, players re-level, re-gear, re-navigate the endgame and the pinnacle leveling systems of Destiny. Now, some pros to this solution. There are pros, there are cons. This solution provides a few things right out of the explanation. It provides both, and all player types, with variations of time they have to play, an avenue to experience the world of Destiny how they want. For players who want to experience a consistent world with storytelling, new loot injections, the normal, permanent realm is there for them always. For players where progression is their form of enjoyment and content and adding meaning to the game, the seasonal realm is there. Progress is reset each season. Season themes can be explored more so in this realm, such as adding new random encounters and seasonal events, while not affecting the core game's balance or experience for those players. The seasonal realm provides an avenue for Bungie to introduce coveted and limited time rewards that showcase player accomplishment. Reaching the pinnacle cap in a seasonal realm where progress is reset could be rewarded with unique cosmetics, armors, and memorabilia that can be showcased to other players, no matter which realm you're on. These can also be given to the normal realm, in all fairness, but additional rewards should be provided for players who accomplish the same sets of feats in a much shorter span of time, such as a season. The seasonal realm allows Bungie to have a separate sandbox for perks, weapons, abilities, and balancing opportunities. This can prove to be very useful, as it allows a more flexible playground for Bungie to introduce new and exciting perks that are similar to the OG Mountaintop or Recluse when they were introduced. The worst case scenario is that Bungie introduces a broken system or perk or weapon into the game. It's only available on the season realm, and at the end of that season, it goes away, naturally. This is also providing Bungie with a testing bed for future modes, gameplay systems that could be added as a season mechanic, and then later maybe added to the core game once the season is concluded and Bungie decides the game could benefit from the seasonal system becoming a permanent addition. Now, there are some cons to the system. Separate realms. Having two versions of Destiny simultaneously running will bring with it hardware limitations. Bungie has to have servers to handle two separate versions of the game. Bandwidth limitations. They also have to keep in mind there's going to be balancing discrepancies. If you have systems at work in one version of the game and not the other, there's going to be some possible balancing that has to happen in addition. So this is going to pose some new challenges to the balancing team. And development. Developing a version of the game separate from the core version might possibly have some split development pipelines than what they have today. Essentially, Bungie's going to have two different versions of Destiny to ensure are maintained and operational. This also brings with it the issue of separate pools of players, making sure there's enough people to matchmake, and Fireteam Finder is not affected by having large number of players possibly switch to one realm or the other. Having new things introduced in a realm that has to be played with a reset is going to cause people to become frustrated. This just speaks for itself. Bungie cannot risk raising the ceiling or introducing crazy new things into the permanent version of the game for the sake of power creep or perpetual leveling. This is a problem that the game has been plagued with for years. People don't want there to be power creep. People don't want to always feel like they're leveling, and introducing one or the other, it doesn't work in the permanent version. Now, the moment that Bungie has a separate realm where they can freely add these cool new things, people are going to start complaining that they want these cool new things, but they have to reset their character. The moment they introduce these things, people are going to find a way to complain. It's just going to happen. Now, another thing to think about is that Bungie already has plans in place for the future years and the development of Destiny. Bungie's already spoken and committed to different rebalances to difficulty, pursuits, and loot in the future years to come. Tyson Green is at the helm of the game as game director, and he seems to be making some pretty good changes and some commitment to those changes and communication about them. So adding a seasonal realm to the game on top of their already in the pipeline solutions may not be the best use of time to Bungie. Although, to me, it's a conversation worth having. That's all. That's what I've got to say. I love playing games about loot and grinding, but the problem is that these games have a ceiling that many players, including myself, do reach. And moving or adjusting that ceiling in these kinds of games always causes problems, because some people will never reach that ceiling, and seeing it get further from them is not a good feeling. I understand. Different kinds of players need different kinds of incentives to play, and never moving these goalposts, never moving these senses of progression that Destiny 2 has had for years, bleeds players like myself. Bungie isn't giving us a Destiny 3, a reset for everybody, but players like myself, big, meaningful progression journeys are what we love about these games. Plus 10 power at the tail end of the Pinnacle journey that every season we're going to be getting just isn't going to solve it for us. And what I lay out here, think